Well, hello, dear listeners and dear viewers, and welcome to season two of the unseen process of recruiting. What happens after you click submit? Here we are, Greg, season two. It's been phenomenal, hasn't it? How are you, Greg?
I'm doing well. Long time no see. What's
I
up?
know.
How's everything been?
Yeah, things have been going really well. A lot has happened since the last time we saw each other, but it's
How's
great. Yeah, it's great to have you back. It's great to do this again. I'm excited about season two. How about you?
always?
Yeah,
It's a little too excite us these days.
yeah. Um, let's talk about 2020 though. And looking back, right when we launched this series, what stands out for you in terms of recruiting in 2020?
um, what stands out? I think 2020 had a lot of uncertainty. I think there's a lot of things on pause. And I think as we went into 2021, I think a lot of companies and organizations realized that we can't stay in limbo, that we have to move forward regardless of what's going on around us. I think a lot of companies just kind of said at this point, we can't go another year of holding off on hiring and continuing with our processes. We really have to adapt. Uh, I guess that's my biggest reflection. It's been a busy January and so far February.
Yeah, it's I agree with you. I think at the end of December, I noticed a lot of companies ramping up on their hiring, and it just went straight into January with that warp speed. So definitely what we've noticed is that in 2021, there is an inclination to fill positions. And so looking at this year, Greg, what do you think we're going to be talking about? What can our viewers and listeners anticipate this year, particularly those who are looking for a position or looking to change positions?
I think one of the things where topics will shift a little bit is the last couple of years, and it's going to be consistent again. I think it's going to be a candidates market. I think it's going to be again where there's less candidates than there are jobs out there, and that's a lot of times industry specific. But I think an overwhelming part of the market right now, industry wise, will have that mentality. I mean, I'm seeing it right now. It's a limited candidate pool for certain industries, and candidates have say on what they want and what they need and what they're going to get to make a move.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this market is definitely going to be one where, candidates are going to be vying for limited positions. I also don't see virtual interviewing going anywhere. What about you, Greg?
No, virtual interviewing seems to be here to stay right now. Every client I'm working with is still continuing to do it that way. I mean, I have clients that do interviews basically just on the phone. They never even see the person or actually meet the person, and they hire them. I think I think the interview process for 2021 is going to kind of be the same as what we saw the last couple of months prior.
Yeah. And so while that may stay constant, what also stays constant is how candidates are to put their best foot forward during the interview process. And so in 2020, we saw folks, ramp up their online imaging, right, Greg, and be prepared. In 2021, that's not really going to change, is it?
No, I think the biggest thing that's going to change for 2021 is the expectations for candidates um, in this virtual workplace per se. The idea that if you're working from home or you're doing virtual interviews, I think last year there was a little bit of a lower expectation of what's
Yes.
going on behind you,
Mhm.
what your area looked like. I think we're almost a year into this now. There's some expectation that you can get on to have a professional background, that you're not going to be as casual on the Zooms, and that you actually have a dedicated work area, and that your home is now your office as well if you're taking a role like this. It's no longer an impromptu position, that it's going to be temporary.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, that's on the applicant side. On the recruiting side, what we
Mhm.
saw in 2020 was what?
On the recruiting side, 2020, I mean, recruiting was slow in 2020. There was fortunately some industries like insurance that were hiring, but for the most part, there was a lot of uncertainty in a lot of industries. I think going into 2021, the sentiment in the market changed a little bit. Actually, seeing and hearing a lot more on international companies looking to come into the US again, which for the last couple of years they were a little hesitant to. There's a lot more, I think, investments going into different types of companies, AI, biotech, things along those lines. That's a lot of spillover from 2020.
Yeah, and I mean, we did see also, and we spoke about this, some sectors that really got a beating and that are still struggling to get back on their feet, right? I'm thinking about hospitality, right? The hotel business, the cruise line business. What other areas definitely got hit in 2020, Greg?
Of course, hospitality, leisure, but even those areas, they're still behind, but I think they're starting to adapt a little bit. They're starting to pick up. I think as some of these bans get lifted a little bit or eased, you'll see that kind of coming back to somewhat normal, although they have a big hole to dig out of. I think anything that was offering conference space, um, exhibition spaces, anything that would be conference oriented, uh, those areas definitely are taking a beating. Um, I know things like people that were doing season ticket sales at Madison Square Garden, venues where it was group gatherings. Those definitely took beatings, but again, those things are starting to come back now the next couple of weeks. The Barclays Center in New York is going to be opening, so one of the first.
Yeah, so there are a lot of businesses that are opening up again, right? Even in spite of the numbers of COVID. I mean, we have seen a decrease across the country. There are thoughts as to why that is the case. How do you see COVID affecting the workplace from your perspective, Greg, in 2021?
Um, Truthfully, it was my personal opinion. I'd probably see COVID affecting the workplace similar to 2020 to an extent. I think all that social distancing still has to be in place. I think, if anything, it kind of created, I'd like to say, a revolution in the workplace. It gave people some space in their office. Uh, I think you can see that open workspace where people are sitting across from each other, disappearing. Some of these shared office spaces like WeWorks, I think there's obviously going to be physical changes in there. Um, and then I also think the adaptation of working from home and having that remote workforce is here to stay. I mean, a lot of companies started giving up office space and told their staff it's just permanent work from home at this point. So I think, again, similar to 2020, that it's still going to be very virtual and remote.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't I don't see that going anywhere. What I do see is the potential to make sure that individuals are tested and ready to go back into a physical workspace when that happens, right, Greg? So we're going to talk about that in 2021 about the expectations around COVID.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of legal issues to be sorted out now that, I mean, from when we spoke last time to now, a vaccine got approved, people are able to get vaccinated. I'm sure you can see a lot of legal issues on that. Can they force vaccinations on their staff? Who's opting to get a vaccine?
Yeah.
What's the efficiency of the vaccine for how long? I mean, as recent as this morning, I saw an article that said the Johnson & Johnson vaccine you have to take every year and it's going to be treated like a flu
Yeah.
shot. So, um, I think eventually over time, maybe it will become like a flu with just various mutations. But unfortunately, I'm a recruiter, not a doctor, so I can just know what I read and learn.
Yeah. You mentioned artificial intelligence. We're definitely going to tackle that in season two. What other areas do you see us talking about, Greg?
Cannabis. I think the cannabis industry, um, that's an industry that rolls across to multiple affects many companies. I mean, from an insurance standpoint, insurance companies have to come out with different insurance policies to protect cannabis companies. And I know I just said companies 18 times. Banking, they have to adapt to taking money from these cannabis and marijuana related businesses, and down to the consumer protections. So it's just a snowball effect. Artificial intelligence, biotechnology, I think anything technology related, um, classrooms, virtual learning. I think the education system, there's going to be a lot of things geared towards education, especially as people are still home, and kids are still home, and this doesn't seem to be a full end in sight on that, that there's not going to be a change. And now we even saw with snow days and stuff like that, there was an efficiency to it. The kids were able to still do schoolwork when it snowed. There wasn't a snow day for them. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We'll cover those topics, and also we're going to bring in to these episodes some staffers we didn't get a chance to talk to in season one and hear their perspectives. Right, Greg?
of course, I will bring in some familiar faces too from the last season as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Greg, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to starting next week, right? With tackling topics on the workplace and letting folks know what the unseen process of recruiting is all about in these areas. Um, Greg, it's great to see you.
Yeah, it's always nice to see you too. It's nice to be back at and feel like I'm socializing a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, dear listeners and dear viewers, we'll see you next week. In the meantime, thanks for tuning in, and thank you to all our growing listenership, right, Greg? We've had folks listen from all different parts of the world. We've gotten comments on how fantastic the series is, and we appreciate it. You know, don't forget to like us on social media, follow the YouTube channel, the Global Advocate Career Podcast. Anything else, Greg, that comes to mind we want to remind our listeners and viewers?
No, just keep listening.
Keep listening, keep watching. Thank you, Greg, as being the gracious host that you are. And thank you, dear listeners and dear viewers. Until next week.